This is Hidden Killers with Tony Brueski. Here now, Tony Brueski.
We hear it all the time. He's a psychopath. He's a narcissist. What is he? The case of Bryan Kohberger, once accused, now convicted of murdering 4 college students in Idaho. It's been said louder, longer, and with more certainty than most people, frankly, deserve. The problem, psychopath and narcissist aren't just spicy insults for people who do horrific things or clinical terms with criteria, kind of, thresholds and consequences. They mean something, and when you misuse them, when you treat them like personality paintbrushes for the criminally accused, you risk misunderstanding the very thing you're trying to name. Motive, right? Because at the end of the day, that's what everybody's trying to figure out in the Kohberger case. So let's do this right. Terms are being thrown around out there. They have been forever. We do it too. Not saying we haven't. You're like, Tony, you say narcissist all the time. You're damn right I do, because all roads frickin' lead to it. But let's take a step back. I will take a step back with you. Let's do a little table setting here. Psychopath is not even an official diagnosis. It doesn't appear anywhere in the DSM, the Diagnostic Bible for Psychiatry. What we're actually talking about is a cluster of traits: callousness, superficial charm, emotional shallowness, manipulativeness, lack of remorse, that can be measured on something called the Hare Psychopathy Checklist. It's a forensic tool used mostly by professionals in prisons and courtrooms, and scored on basically what they find out after structured interviews and deep dives into someone's entire life. Not after one crime, not after one courtroom clip, and definitely not from TikTok. Narcissistic personality disorder, or NPD, is in the DSM, but it's not a synonym for vanity or arrogance. It's a long-term pattern of grandiosity, entitlement, and a desperate need for admiration, paired with low empathy and deep sensitivity to criticism. It's not about liking yourself too much. It's about needing everyone else to validate that you're special, and reacting with rage or manipulation when they don't. Makes sense, doesn't it? So, with all of that in mind, let's ask the actual question. What do we know about Bryan Kohberger's behavior? What's been documented, alleged, or confirmed? And does any of it point towards traits that typically show up in psychopathy or narcissism? Or maybe a little bit of both. Let's start with what we can say without speculation. Kohberger was arrested in late 2022 and charged with the murders of 4 University of Idaho students: Kaylee Gonzalez, Madison Mogan, Xander Kernodle, and Ethan Chapin. Then in July of 2025, he entered a guilty plea and was sentenced to 4 consecutive life terms. He declined to speak at sentencing. The judge noted a profound absence of remorse. The surviving families described the pain and destruction left in his wake and what it meant to lose people so young, so brutally, and with no explanation, no apology, and for many, no understanding of why. The question of motive has hovered over this case from day one. Police affidavits pointed to digital surveillance, a phone that went dark and came back online at odd hours, a white Hyundai seen circling the neighborhood near the time of the killings, and then, most damning, that knife sheath, a single trace of DNA on the button snap recovered next to one of the victims. That's all been documented. But here's where the psychological profile starts to take shape. Not from the crime itself, but from how it was carried out and what it suggests about the person behind it. Okay? Prosecutors said Kohberger had visited a neighborhood a dozen times before the murders. They said he moved through the house efficiently, bypassing rooms, leaving others untouched, that the sheath was the only physical evidence left behind, that his phone was turned off deliberately, they argued, to avoid tracking. They turned back, and then he turned back on after the fact of all this taking place, when he got his phone back on. In short, This wasn't a frenzied act of passion. It was targeted. It was controlled. It was choreographed. And control is the key word here. Because when someone plots a crime like this, when they surveil the area, plan their escape, choose a weapon that leaves no digital trace and seemingly believe they can slip through the crime scene without getting caught, what you're looking at isn't just cruelty, it's confidence, sometimes overconfidence. Which brings us closer to narcissism. Kohberger was a PhD student in criminology. He studied criminal behavior, wrote about the minds of offenders. And in a paper that prosecutors attempted to introduce as evidence, outlined how crime scenes are processed and how contamination can be avoided. That paper was titled Crime Scene Scenario Final, and it's still publicly available. We even read it aloud here on the program a little while back. In it, Kohberger describes a hypothetical break-in, mapping out variables like forensic contamination, police procedure, and response time. Studying forensics is not a crime, but when you line up his academic obsession with control, his alleged surveillance of the neighborhood, and the fact that the only trace he left behind was one he may not have known existed, one tiny snap of a button, and that little knife sheath with his DNA, what you're left with is a disturbing possibility that Kohberger didn't just think he understood the system, he may have thought he could beat it. That belief that you're smarter than the cops, smarter than the courts, smarter than the world, isn't unique to this case. It shows up again and again in people with narcissistic traits. It's not about loving the sound of your own voice. It's about needing to win at all costs, to preserve a fragile sense of superiority. Because at the end of the day, narcissists hate themselves. They may never admit it. They may not even know it on the surface anymore because they get so grandiose in their own BS. But at the end of the day, that's what it's all masking. And that brings us to the other side of the spectrum, psychopathy. The violence in this case, if proven exactly as described, was personal. Close range, high risk. And yet Kohberger, again, based on filings and statements from prosecutors, allegedly left the scene, cleaned up, and resumed life as usual. There were no reports of public breakdowns, no confessions, no signs outwardly that something had gone terribly wrong. We've seen the video of him at Costco the next morning getting turned away because the idiot didn't have a Costco card. But I'm just drinking my water here. I'm Bryan Kohberger. You know, there was something about that video. There was something. That ability to compartmentalize, that cold, calculated attachment after a brutal act of what he had just committed. They go walk around Costco Saturday morning, like a lot of us do who haven't brutally taken the lives of 4 college students, seemingly at random the night before. Most of us are there for the free samples. I think he was there for an entirely different reason. It can look like psychopathy. And in some cases, it is. But it can also be something else entirely. Fear, panic, a rehearsed mask, or just the clinical flatness of someone who spent their life walled off from others. And here's the part that matters. None of that can be confirmed from outside. Because even the most cold-blooded killer might cry themselves to sleep the next night. And even the most remorseful offender might shut down in court. Behavior alone doesn't equal diagnosis. But if we're just talking traits, because we obviously can't diagnose anyone here, if we're analyzing what's publicly known about Kohberger's alleged mindset, his academic history, his planning, and his behavior post-crime, then yes, we can say that certain patterns lead toward traits consistent with narcissism and psychopathy. Not the disorders, not the labels, the features, the forensic awareness, the pre-crime surveillance, the attempt at invisibility. The belief, if the prosecution's theory is correct, that he could pull this off and vanish into the fog. All of that leans towards instrumental violence, goal-driven, not chaotic, not emotional, a kind of violence that treats people as means to an end. In clinical psychology, that's a red flag, not because it's evil, but because it signals detachment, not rage, not heartbreak, just task completion with no emotion. But again, to know whether Kohberger actually meets criteria for a personality disorder, a licensed forensic psychologist would need to sit with him for hours, with records, with a full developmental history, with insight into how he treated others over time, teachers, friends, partners, parents. None of that is in the court files. None of that is public. And that's why the responsible answer, the only answer is, we don't know. And we won't know. Because that's not what the criminal justice system was built to ask. What we can say is this. The behavior described in this case, controlled, cold, and calculated, reflects the kind of pattern that prosecutors, clinicians, and yes, even the public, instinctively associate with the darkest corners of human psychology. It's not about punishment. It's about understanding risk, how people get here, and what, if anything, could ever stop them. Maybe that's the point. It's not to put a name on the monster, but to understand the path that made him. Because until we stop slapping labels on the end result and start tracing the threads that lead there, we'll just keep getting it wrong. Not just in court, but in life. It's easy to label something. It's not as easy to get ahead of it. I don't know how you get ahead of Kohberger. There were signs. See something, say something. People were. But you can't prosecute. You can't lock somebody away for being creepy and weird until they actually break the law, which, in hindsight, before the law intervened, it was very much stalking behavior. Had he been stopped, had he been caught multiple times doing that, he might have had a little hiccup there, a little speed bump. This is why reporting is important, even if nothing is done initially. Because if it's on a record, if, say, and I'm in no way blaming the victims here in any way, shape, or form, they weren't even sure if they were being followed or stalked. There were signs, but not enough to quickly say, let's call 911 and get somebody over here to look at what's going on. It was far too... If that was him that was stalking them, he knew how to get out of the scene quick enough without being caught. But in theory, let's say somebody did catch up to him. Take this case out of the equation. If you're just listening to this going, I can relate, or had related, or maybe just take this down into your memory bank to maybe need it at some point down the road. Hopefully not, but you got it. If there is a record and he stopped, like, what are you doing over here? Why are you hanging out outside these windows? Oh, I was just doing it. There may not be an arrest immediately, but it's on record then. And his name is on record. Whoever's name is on record that's doing that. So the next time they're caught doing that, because there will be a next time, because stalkers stalk, there's a little more gas in the tank to take him in, to press some charges, to take it further. And then when it happens again, because inevitably they'll get let out again, it's even scarier and stricter. And sometimes those speed bumps hamper something that could go far, far worse. Because narcissists, they don't like being called out on their bullshit. It may be enough for some folks like that to back off. Maybe do something else. Find another hobby that eventually leads to prison. But that's why it is important to document everything and let people know. See something, say something. I know, I've been screaming about it, that do something is the operative part that seems to be missing. But there's a lot of cases where, well, you saw this, you saw that. Was it reported? Was there anything? No. Well, you have to do what you have the ability to do. If it is within your ability to control reporting something, if that's going on, then report it. You have nothing to lose. Get the record in place. Can't stress that enough. Because if there's a record, more action can be taken upon law enforcement to act when it escalates. It's how our system works. We're all in it, whether we want to be or not. And if you want it to work to the best of its ability, as flawed and broken as it is, that is a key step in anything like this. I know I kind of went off topic there, but that is very important. Tell me what your thoughts are in the comments section. At the end of the day, does it even matter what the hell we call him? Probably not. But if you're like me, you'd find it fascinating to dig into the mind of monsters. I don't know if it makes us feel better, more in control, or what it does. But it certainly helps you identify traits of certain people in real life. And I feel like that can be valuable, being aware. At least that's how I feel. Again, tell me your thoughts in the comments section. If you're not there on YouTube, find us, search Hidden Killers with Tony Brueski, or search that wherever you're getting podcasts so you don't miss any of the cases we cover for you right here. Until next time, I am Tony Brueski. We'll talk again real soon.
Want more on this case and others? Then press subscribe now and don't miss a moment of true crime coverage from Tony Brueski and the Hidden Killers podcast.